Hello, I'm Kurt Waldrop, and this is Radical Freedom. I've been asked many times over the years why I'm so deeply committed to supporting the nation of Israel, and I thought I'd take this time to explain my reasons. I'd first like to point out that my reasons are not due to biblical identification of the Israel belonging to the Jewish people. While I have been identified as a right-winger, and I am, I want to address this on a purely secular level. Now, for context, let's briefly examine a little history. During World War I, the Ottoman Empire lost most of their possessions, including the area that was referred to as Palestine. This area had not been an independent nation since it had been conquered in 63 BC by the Roman Empire. And by the way, it wasn't called Palestine at that time. After the First World War, it was now controlled by the British. Before the Second World War, there'd been a small number of Jewish people that decided they would never be seen as normal citizens in most countries. So it was time to have their own country. They had a vision that someday the nation of Israel would rise again from the sands of history, and they invited Jews from all over the world to immigrate there. Well, the British had other ideas since they were fighting a war with the Third Reich, and they needed a peaceful Palestine with minimal strife between the Arabs and the Jews. The need to not let more Jews into the Palestine area became even more important when the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husani, the highest Muslim official in the area, journeyed to Berlin to meet Adolf Hitler on November the 28th, 1941. And there declared opposition to the Jews and support for the cause of the Nazis. Of course, the Reich went down in defeat, and many of those Jews left alive by the Holocaust started to do everything they could to move to the British area called Palestine. On November 29th, 1947, the General Assembly of the United Nations adopted a resolution for the establishment of an independent Jewish state in Palestine. They called upon such inhabitants of the country to take such steps as may be necessary on their part to put the plan into action. On May 14th, 1948, Israel declared its independence, and David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel, reading from their Declaration of Independence, said, "We offer peace and amity to all the neighboring states and their peoples. Invite them to cooperate with the independent Jewish nation for the common good of all. The state of Israel is ready to contribute its full share to the peaceful progress and development of the Middle East." 8 hours after Ben-Gurion read this declaration and this offer of friendship, the Egyptian Air Force dropped the first bombs on the outskirts of Tel Aviv. 5 Arab armies, Egypt, Syria, Transjordan, Lebanon, and Iraq, immediately invaded Israel. The intentions of the Arab leaders were declared by Azam Pasha, Secretary General of the Arab League. He said, "It will be a war of annihilation. It will be a momentous massacre in history that will be talked about like the massacres of the Mongols or of the Crusades." So, it wasn't as much about recovering the land as it was simply death to the Jews. Except that the tiny nation, fighting mostly with bolt-action rifles and a very few World War II surplus aircraft, stopped all 5 armies and fought them back. In the course of pushing these armies back, they took land. And this was the origin of the so-called occupation. In World War II, advancing Soviet armies took parts of Germany that today are just considered to be parts of Russia. It seems like there's a double standard involved to me. Israel has been involved in 4 major wars since independence where they have been attacked, or as in the case of the Six-Day War of 1967, preemptively destroyed giant Egyptian, Syrian, and Jordanian armies and air forces. Also, there has been the ongoing fight against terrorist groups like the PLO and Hamas. So first, I support Israel for their courage against the odds. Secondly, I support Israel because Muslims and Christians, along with Jews, can run for public office there. Faith doesn't matter. In most countries in the Middle East, there is no running for office, and in those few that have elections, can you really imagine a Jew being allowed to run? In Israel, you can be a citizen and have a job and even run for office if you're Jewish, Muslim, Christian, atheist, male, female, straight, or gay. It doesn't matter. You would think that the left would be all about Israel and be against the countries that only have a single recognized religion and where only men can work and be recognized as citizens and where they actually put gay people to death. But they don't. Lastly, they are our only true ally in the Middle East. They regularly share intel with us. They've let our troops base there during both Gulf Wars. And today, most of Israel's enemies are frankly vermin that will intentionally target children and civilians. They are too cowardly to fight the Israeli Defense Force head-to-head. The media constantly treats us to Israel murdering poor innocent Palestinians, who the other Muslim countries banned from immigrating as refugees. The Israelis put up fences to cage off poor innocent people. But the so-called murders by the Israelis of unarmed Palestinians seems to be a case of either the Israelis returning fire when first fired upon, or a case of terrorists hiding out in populated areas hoping that Israel would fire on them and maybe hurt other people so that they can get the cameras on it. As to the fence, well, it's there. It's also sharply reduced the number of successful suicide bomb attacks against Israeli soldiers and civilians. So it's a success. The simple solution to end the shooting and to be rid of the fence is stop screwing with Israel. This idea seems to be far too complex for some, though. Golda Meir, one of the prime ministers of Israel, and I think the first major female prime minister in the world, said that there will finally be peace when the Arab mothers love their children more than they hate Israel. And I agree. Yes, this is a thumbnail view, and it is far more complex than I can possibly explain in a really short video, but hopefully this does give you a decent outline. Thanks for watching. I hope you go below and give me a thumbs up and click on that subscribe button. It'll come up just as soon as I go off screen here. Also, take a look at my book, Radical Freedom. It's on Amazon.com. And until next time, stay free, my friends. Bye for now.